Hello and welcome to Greeting Star. I'm glad you could join me. Today I have some cards for you that I made using a technique that's called kissing, and I used a stencil with it, and you'll see that in a moment. That's that first card there with those hearts. The other two cards are a little bit different, and I'll show you that too. So first off, I'm just going to take this 4.5 by 5, or sorry, 4.25 by 5.5, and I'm just going to tack it down to my multimedia mat there. And this is the stencil I'm using. It's a Kaiser Craft with this Hero Art solid heart stamp and some Memento rosebud ink. And I'm just going to ink the stamp up and get a lot of ink on that, and then I'm going to push it through the stencil. It's not easy to get this through, and you can see that the hearts, the X's won't come through, the circles will. But if you look at this stamp here, you can see the design. And so that's what you get when you stamp it first through a stencil. It's called kissing. You kiss it to the stencil, and then you can stamp that texture onto another card stock and use that as a card. So you get like a 2-for-1, which is really cool. Now I'm just rubbing this here to get rid of the previous texture, and then re-stamping again, kissing, whatever you want to call it. And you can see it's not easy to stamp through this stencil. The stencil's plastic, it's kind of thick, so that technique didn't work as well as I had wanted. I've done it before with other stencils and it did go through. So now what I'm doing is I'm just going to add this strip of mirror cardstock. It's silver mirror cardstock, but I didn't like the high reflective nature of it. So I'm using this Speedball brayer, and this is one that I bought that comes with 4 different brayers. Some of them are softer, and one of them I think is foam, and this one's a really hard one. And I'm just taking some tulle and I'm rolling over it with a brayer to put that texture into that mirrored strip, and then it's not quite so reflective. So I'm going to use this sort of hot pink cardstock, and it's a little bit bigger than what I needed for the card, so that's why I added the adhesive to only the top part of that pink cardstock, and then I added it to the bottom of the actual white card. And I'm just trimming off the excess here. Look how thin that paper trimmer can get that cardstock. That's pretty amazing. So now I'm just going to use some Tombow Mono liquid glue to adhere that strip to my card. And if you want, you can be done. I like having a stash of cards available that I can add greetings to later, so that way I can have cards available for whatever occasion that might pop up. So I do like to do that, but I do add some a word die to this, a word die cut, and you'll see that later. It's a Hero Arts one. So I'm going to use this acrylic block here to just hold that down and help it to, once the glue dries, it'll adhere better. And for this one, now this one you can see all I did was use the ink to go through the stencil. There was no kissing involved. I just went ahead and I actually used my finger. I dabbed my finger into that Memento rosebud that you saw earlier, and I just rubbed it through the stencil. It's a little bit messy, but I think it looks kind of neat, kind of interesting, kind of artsy in a way. So I'm covering the top and the bottom with this pink cardstock. And it's kind of fun to make more than one card out of the materials that you have. It's less waste instead of just putting that excess material away, because I find that I never go back to it and it just kind of piles up. So I like being able to make as many as I can out of the materials I have out, and then that way less waste. So I'm just going to put this same silver mirrored cardstock with a texture that I created with the tool. I'm going to put it on the top and the bottom there. So again, I'm just going to use some Tombow Mono liquid adhesive. And I do have, you know, using stencils is really a lot of fun. There's so many different things you can do with it. One of the things you can do, which I have in a card that I've demonstrated before, it's a Christmas card, but you can run it through your Cuttlebug or your any kind of die cut machine that you have. If you have one of those foam pads, you can basically dry emboss with a stencil, and I'll have a link to that down below the video, and I'll try to put one in the video if I can. So be sure to check that out. So now I've got some Neenah Solar White Classic Crust. It's 110 pound for the card base. I like to use that really thick cardstock for the card base because I think that it really, if you're going to add that panel on the front, that's pretty heavy. I just think you need that heavier cardstock for the base of the card. But you don't have to. You could go for an 80 pound if that's all you have. So I'm just adding both of those to the card base, and in a moment you'll see I'm going to use some Hero Art Stampin' Cut. It comes with a little word die and then some stamps as well to add some greetings. Now this third card here is a little bit different. It's a flower stamp, and I didn't use any kissing. It already had those lines in it, so I just stamped it on a 2x2 square piece of cardstock, and then I cut it in half both ways, so at the 1-inch mark. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop those up with some 3D foam dimensional adhesive, and that way those that image of that flower will be raised. And I'm going to leave space between the squares, so it looks like kind of like a cross in the middle, sort of like a window. And I'm just going to put those on there, and you'll be able to see that once I set that first one, I can adjust the others and put them where I want them. And I'm not going to show you all of them, just the first couple ones, so you can see what I'm doing and get an idea here. Those little papers are kind of a pain to deal with. So you can see that space there, and I did that with all of them. And then what I did was I created a little frame to put around them. And I'm using two separate dies. I'm using the Spellbinders Nestabilities and the Wafer Thin Metal Die Set from Umbrella Crafts. And so when I use both of those, I can create that little frame. So one of them fits inside the other. So I'm going to use the Umbrella Crafts first, and it cuts out a square. And then I'm going to use the Spellbinders Nestabilities on that square. And you'll notice that it will also cut out a square, but it will leave that border, and then that'll give you that frame. So you'll see in just a moment here what I'm talking about. It's kind of a fun technique to do. You could also, if you have a cutting machine like a Cricut or a Cameo, you could use that to design your own little frames. So another good thing about using the thicker cardstock is when this happens, the paper comes apart. It doesn't completely come apart. You can save it. So that's kind of a nice little thing to have there if you use that thicker cardstock. It'll save you on things like that. So now I do decide to go ahead and cut out these frames from that mirrored cardstock, that silver mirrored cardstock, because I wanted all of the cards to kind of have the same theme, the pink with the silver. But I don't use the brayer on it. And it's kind of nice because if with this white cardstock frame, if I put the silver one on top of it, it kind of raises it even more. So this here is the Hero Art Stampin' Cut set. There's a hello one. I have a prayers one with lots of different acrylic stamp sentiments that you can use too. So you can see here I use the thanks and the hello. And on the hello card, the sending you hugs is basically heat embossing with a silver heat embossing powder. So I hope you had fun watching this, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me, and if you do like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And also you can check out an ebook that I've written. It's available on amazon.com/author/greetingstar. And of course you can always get lots of more ideas for making cards at my blog at greetingstar.org. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.